So
Yeah.
we will start with the introduction and then we will just jump right in, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So whenever we're ready,
Do you want me to count like three, two, one?
it's okay. I could just start.
You can start by
So
yourself, please.
yes, okay. So we are back with this podcast series called See Through Feminism, hosted by Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung Regional Office for Southeast Asia and FemNimit, where we will investigate feminist movements across Southeast Asia. Again, I'm your host, Jirada, and we continue our podcast episode with the reckoning that Southeast Asia has a common yet complex local and colonial histories that have influenced the development of feminist movements in many different ways. But despite these challenges, there are common themes that resonate across the region. And in fact, each country's feminist movement can offer stories that could benefit one another, and the public can also learn more about these feminist mobilizations, support, and consciousness. So we are investigating these stories one topic at a time. For our third episode, we continue with one of the most pressing themes in feminist movements, which is gender-based violence. And we have a guest who have been working actively in this region for a long time now. Her name is Jean Chong. Jean Chong has been an LGBTQ activist for more than 30 years. She is the executive director and the founder of Feminist LBQ Network that covers East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, based in Bangkok, Thailand. Jean also leads and co-founded Sayoni, a queer feminist organization in Singapore that organizes community events, conducts research, and advocates for equality, well-being, and dignity to improve the lives of LGBTQ people. So I have Jean's bio that's really long, and I will include that in the transcription because that's going to take many minutes for me to go to what Jean has done so far. But Jean, feel free to jump in and add if there's any part of the work that you have done that you would like to highlight as a part of your introduction.
Yeah.
If not,
Hi.
we could just start the podcast.
Yeah, we can start the podcast. I think I've been hanging around volunteering for a long time, so I hope I can contribute to the podcast.
Oh, definitely. And thank you for coming. In fact, I've been as a person who's been working in gender space in Thailand, I've been hearing your name for a few years now. So I'm actually pretty excited to have you here.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I hope they are good things. So yeah, I mean I've been organizing in my own country, in ASEAN, Asia. I've done global work as well. Actually, I work on a couple of years. I work on gender-based violence in China with LGBT groups and the women's movement. So it was very interesting, but I think it also gave me a lot of insights in how gender-based violence is very similar. And the cause of it is very similar, but the manifestation of it can be different depending on the context you come from. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I definitely have to ask you more about that. But first of all, what inspired you to create your LGBTQ plus network and what gap you felt needed to be filled in the region?
Yeah, I think the creation of the Asia Feminist LBQ Network was over a period of a few decades, actually. So one of the things that we noticed is that so LBQ persons, including people who are assigned female at birth, like trans men or trans lesbians, we've noticed that in the LGBT movement, gender-based violence is not a topic that is commonly talked about. We focus a lot about criminalization or the law and violence in public spaces, right? And in the women's movement or mainstream service providers, we found that they know nothing about how LBQ or LBT people suffer gender-based violence. There's no concept at all. So and then the struggle continues that when we try to talk to funders, the LGBT funders, they will look at us as like, you should talk to women's groups. We don't fund LBQ, yeah, women's group. Then when we go to women's funders. We're like, you should talk to LGBT funders. So we are in this very intersectional space where we are like the feminist group in LGBT movement, and then we are the queer group in the women's movement. We're in between zone that we are quite invisible, and the discourse, the feminist or gender framework in the LGBT movement is very poor. It's very identity based. It's not feminist. So the gap was very obvious. And since 2010 or 2013, we held consultations with LBQ or LBT groups across Asia. The number one issue everybody talks about is gender-based violence. Every single one of them, uh, every country. So the second issue is of course funding, because Asia is quite underfunded compared to the other region, but so it's interrelated. So, and as a result, 2019 we had a consultation with activists, and we said that we cannot wait for women's groups to see us, and we cannot wait for LGBT groups to see us. We have to organize ourselves and advocate for our own issues. So this is part of the reason why we formed the network. And gender-based violence is one of our key thematic program. The second key thematic program is around SRHR. Yeah. So again, things like abortion rights never talk about in LGBT spaces. Yeah, this is, I think, because the world is patriarchal, right? There's this assumption women have no problems, but the problems are unseen. And then queer people don't get pregnant, but then there are bisexual women. So there's this neglect of women's experiences, or people who have women bodies, their experiences, and how their bodily autonomy and their right to against gender-based violence is totally being neglected. So the gap is quite big. So yeah.
I can imagine. And this is how many years ago when you started this out?
Oh, you mean the network?
Yeah.
Oh, the network is quite new. We officially started organizing in 2022. But the
Ah,
consultation we had took us more than 10 years. There's a key reason to it. Nobody understands us, or nobody wants to fund us. So there's this thinking that, oh, we fund women's groups, and then we fund LGBT groups. Some of the money will be trickled down to this LBQ, people assigned female at birth. But this trickle down thinking is a capitalist thinking. You never get it. You will never get it. I have worked in the movement for 30 years, 32 years. I've never seen it. LBQ or LBT groups continue to be, they only get in Asia 0.4% of global LGBT funding. This is how
oh,
severe it is. Yeah.
oh wow. That's
Yeah, not even 1%. So yeah, so I think the issues are structural. It's also about how society is constructed, is patriarchal, and that manifestation of patriarchy is in the LGBT movement as well in the women's movement. It was very difficult when you are women who are different, marginalized women who are different. So, um, and you know how society punishes people who are different, single women, unmarried mothers, right? So, or women who do not behave. So lesbians are seen as women who do not behave. And then trans men in the patriarchal world are seen not as men, but as women who misbehave and want and trying to be different and trying to be um, the powers that be, which is men, right? Patriarchy. So, and then the question is, how does violence and discrimination gets manifest in a way that is unique and different? Yeah.
right. And how does the Asia Feminist LBQ network fill that gap? What do you do?
Yeah. So I think the very first thing we went out to do is to do research. So we produced quite a series of research around self-care well-being, around organizational development. We published a report about at the SRHR in the Malay archipelago, which is majority Muslim, and then Philippines is Catholic. Singapore is a mix. So to investigate how SRHR rights are being violated by religion and criminalization, and then because under SRHR is also gender-based violence and how this came about. So we did a research around bisexual women in Asia, who's going to publish soon. Uh, and then some of the issues around bi women and lesbians are forced marriage, which is a form of corrective rape, right? They're being forced to marry a stranger and being raped to produce children. And then we just concluded a research on funding for Asia and the Pacific. Yeah. And then we also do capacity training on groups to empower them to advocate for the issues, and also for cross-regional learning, right? So maybe some of the activists can learn from Thai activists can learn from South Asians, we do advocacy as well. And the last piece that we do is around resourcing, trying to increase funding for grassroots groups. Yeah.
That's a really big scope of work that
Yeah.
you're trying to do.
I know, but we're still baby. But we had more than 10 years, we have 3 decades to think about what we want to do. And we have close to 30 years of observing what is wrong with the system, and how people are not disappearing into the gaps. So we had lots of time to think about what we want to do. So I mean the last 3 years we've starting to do a lot, but it takes time. We can't change the world, but I think we've done quite a lot actually. Yeah.
I agree. And how would you describe the current landscape of gender-based violence in Asia, especially as it affects LGBTQ people based
Yeah.
based on the research that you have done?
Yeah, I think some of the effects are quite severe and not well understood. Um, and a lot of times, community groups have no real language to explain what is happening to them. A lot of times they will just say, "Oh, yeah, it's because I'm a woman, so I'm a born woman. Therefore, I suffer this." But what is the discourse around it? So, for example, we did this research around SRHR in Indonesia. So how does criminalization, discrimination, and your gender identity as a woman affect you? So this girl came out to her ex-boyfriend. So her ex-boyfriend raped her. And as a result, she was pregnant, and then she went to get an abortion. Abortion is not illegal in Indonesia, but instead into the government hospitals, but instead of providing her with a medical help, they shame her. They say, "Oh, you're a woman. Why you have sex? You should keep the baby," uh, and so on. But at the same time, she couldn't say that she was raped because she's a lesbian, because the LGBT identity in Indonesia is very dangerous to say you're LGBT. So she went to a private hospital, and the private hospital practitioners told her to repent, and because she's Muslim, to repent. Why she have sex outside the marriage and all. So she couldn't get the medical services she need, even though she encountered gender-based violence. And eventually she went to get illegal abortion and almost died from it. And she still suffer the medical conditions from the illegal abortion. So this is a classic case of gender-based violence where corrective rape happens. But corrective rape doesn't happen to cis heterosexual women. What happens to cis heterosexual women is punitive rape or whatever version, right? So corrective rape is when you're being targeted as a lesbian or bisexual woman, and because you're a woman. So when these two comes together to intersect, right, what is the new and different kind of gender-based violence that comes out from that um intersection? So this is how I explain to people. So there's this assumption, all women are raped. It's the same. It's not. So the motivation around why lesbian or bi or even trans men who are raped was not just to punish them, but was to correct them. You need to stop being women that are ill-disciplined, and you need to behave in a way that the patriarchal society says you should be. Yeah, so these are some of the stories, um, and then if transgender men get targeted, they are not just raped, they're often killed. So there's an element of overkill in a lot of this violence. It's not enough, they just rape you. They have to punish you for violating the patriarchal society. So I think the research was very important to explain how the violence is manifest that is similar to violence against women, but also uniquely different. Yeah,
Oh, that's thank you for sharing. That is shocking to hear. On my
mm,
end, we have been reading about intersectionality, right? But to hear how it actually manifests in real life and with so
yeah,
many layers of violence from so many institutions as a person trying to navigate it, it's
yeah.
shocking to hear.
Yeah, I think a lot of times violence that happens to women or cis queer women and maybe trans women, trans men are behind closed doors. So the more visible you are in public spaces, uh, you get targeted because people can see you, right? You're not passing. But even if you pass, people cannot see you. The public violence uh, it shifts to behind closed door family violence or intimate violence. And when I was working on it in China, the violence, a lot of it comes from family. And the public, there's no hardly any violence from public. The terrible violence all came from family. They'll send you to your conversion therapy, electric shocks, um, and things like that. So I like to say to a lot of practitioners that yes, the LGBT spectrum that we all suffer. There's this assumption that there's certain groups suffer more, but it's not like that. We all suffer differently, and it has a lot to do with how the patriarchal society controls you, and then if you're not visible, it doesn't mean that you don't suffer as well. So yeah.
That's true. And is there any particular forms of violence or discrimination that are often overlooked based on whether it's your experience or your network's research?
I think a lot of I mean there's this of course if you are visible in public spaces there's a higher chance of public violence, but I think in the Asian context public violence is not, compared to the West for example, it's not the big thing. So a lot of the research shows that our violence are very connected to degrees of separation. So there's always these three spaces where violence happens, especially for LGBT people: family, workplace, and school. So it's because that degree of separation with the people we work with, that you come in close contact. So the discrimination and violence often happen in these places, not so much public spaces. Of course, public spaces happens, but in comparison to the degrees of separation spaces, there's a big gap.
And when you say public violence, are we speaking about just geographical, just location, or are we speaking about
Mm.
hate crime, a complete
Uh,
stranger coming to attack you?
Yeah, hate crime. Like for example, me, if you look at me, I'm quite a butch looking, so I'm very tall. So people don't tend to pick on me, but they recognize me. So my experience, like if I identify as a woman, but my experience when I try to go to the bathroom, for example, I get verbal abuse as well, as much as a trans person. So as well, if they are not passing. So then the question is, uh, how does society police gender, right? How does society decide you have long hair, therefore you're a woman? If you're short hair, a short hair woman, therefore you're not a woman. And I find the experience very unique to different countries. Like Philippines and Thailand were way easier for me to go bathroom. People don't care. People are more exposed and socialized. But if I go to a country like a Muslim country or the Middle East, it's very hostile, very difficult to go to the bathroom. I am scared to go to the bathroom.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
And that's everyday experience as well because everyone has to go to the toilet, right?
yeah. So yeah, so some women's groups are like very scared of trans people, trans women especially, going to the bathroom. I'm like, I think they're more scared of you. So they're more scared of you. They just want to go to the bathroom. So so is then that's when society decides what is gender stereotype. How should a woman look like? How should a man look like? And then if you don't fall into those how a man should look like, then you are not women enough, not male enough. You are don't know what you are, and then you don't qualify to go to the women's toilet. So which is kind of sad, lah. Yeah.
That's true. And now that you mentioned about, your sense of safety accessing public
Mm,
bathrooms, it occurred to me that, with the current global geopolitical shift that's happening right now, it seems like there's been a lot of anti-gender sentiment.
yeah.
What are your observations on the impacts of that on gender-based violence? Especially, I think the discourse also revolves around nationalization,
Yeah.
securitization of essentially everything.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of it from Global North. So the word that they coined anti-gender movement. So amongst Asian activists, so a lot of us has picked up the word, but a lot of us were also saying gender-based violence activists were also saying this is not a new word, new phenomenon for us, especially in Asia where a lot of Asian culture is very patriarchal, right? So it's almost like the global north has their liberal democracy and all their um more progressive societies taken away from them, and government has become conservative. So and all these conservative groups are coordinating with each other to but the what's happening in Asia is that we have the all institutions that are holding up all this anti-gender ideology. For example, like the Malaysian government, so they are the old institutions that are holding on to this, and you cannot be transgender, you cannot be a woman should be like this and that. Like my home country in Singapore, if you're single for a long time, if you're a single mother, you cannot buy public housing. So you're being punished because you're not married in any way. So uh I think in the Asian context, we've always had this anti-gender movement. We've always had governments across Asia, whether from south to east, they are authoritarian, or paternalistic. That's the word we always had this. And most of our government systems are paternalistic, that surrounds men, right? So uh the um the community before you, right? Your family before you, and the government before you. So there's this hierarchy of social institutions that surrounds the construction of family and society. So I just feel like it's not a new topic. We always have it. Yeah,
Now that you've mentioned it, I've been thinking about so many teaching and discourse that in fact became invisible because we're so used to it.
yeah,
Whether it's in school, it's in family, it's in Buddhist in temples, for
yeah,
example. So yeah,
yeah,
it's really nothing
exactly.
new, right?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that the West came coin a term, so there's something happening in Europe or in America, and they're organizing it in a certain way because the churches or religion. But in the East, I think the anti-gender issue are similar, but the manifestation and how it came about is different. For let's talk about China and Vietnam, right? China doesn't have religion because the government doesn't allow it, so it's all control. So a lot of the let's say conversion therapy is not driven by religion compared to maybe Indonesia. It's driven by family because the family pay the hospitals to try to change you. So it was a very interesting observation, but maybe in Malaysia, the state is the one who's spending money to persecute you and to send you to conversion camps. So that's why I'm saying like Asia is big and quite complicated, I think.
Right. And but speaking of geopolitical shift, I think one thing that at least I've been noticing is
Yeah,
the impact of the funding landscape,
yeah, yes. Oh, you
right?
mean?
Because
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Uh, because like the USAID has been shut down, and I've been
Yeah,
hearing a lot about how at least in Thailand NGOs they've been talking about the lack of funding, and I think at the beginning you also mentioned about the lack of funding to begin with even
yeah.
before this geopolitical shift. So
Yeah.
is there, from your observation, what kind of impact or changes has been happening?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of jobless people. A lot. So we put out an ad for an advocacy and research officer. And usually the applicant, we say very clearly the applicants must know, be out and be based in Asia. But we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants from Caribbean, America, Europe, uh, everywhere. And I'm like, but they apply and I look at their CV. You can tell they have some kind of job until the USAID and the funding cut, and then they started consultancy work. So it tells me, as a gauge from my experience, it tells me that there are a lot of joblessness and a lot of non-profits have closed down because we've always don't not have enough. So now with the funding cuts, the impact is quite severe.
I agree. I think I've been hearing stories about in Thailand as well,
Yeah,
about how people have been looking for jobs. I think it happened around February, mid-February onwards, and many
yeah.
people are still looking for jobs, even right now, which is approaching December. So
Yeah,
it's been a
yeah,
really tough situation.
yeah. It's been a tough year, and I when I start to see applicants from Africa, from I know things are very bad, or from the United States and Europe. These are the regions that have the most, usually the most funding compared to Asia. So they are trying to compete for jobs in Asia. That tells you something. So yeah,
And from your many years of experience, do you reckon the pendulum will swing to the other side, perhaps?
I think it'll take a few years. Like there was a recent report by the Human Rights Funders Network about funding for 2026. Bilateral funding means government funding, and they predict a drop of 66 million. Yeah, 66 million US dollars drop. So I think it'll take a while.
Wow. I
Yeah,
I agree. And it felt like after USA was shut down, I've been seeing trends where countries in Europe following the same trend,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it shifting the focus from gender to climate instead.
yeah, yeah. Every climate is a easier. It's a very important topic, but I think topics of gender-based violence, SRHR, LGBT rights, it's no longer a priority. But that's good news, right? Canada, won the election, the progressives, and Netherlands also, the progressive won the election. So there's some good news coming out from it.
That's true. And hopefully in Southeast Asia as well.
I know Southeast Asia is so underfunded. Yeah,
And can you share some stories or examples about successful examples just to lift up the mood a bit in terms of perhaps have you seen any grassroots organizing that made a tangible difference in addressing
yeah.
violence?
I think to me, I think some of the countries, if you look at Thailand, for example, so you've done fantastic work. I've seen uh, very unique organizations doing self-care and well-being, and that's their entire portfolio. And they've tried funding. The funding cut affect them just a little bit, and then a lot of the women's groups have fantastic organizing capacity. So I just, when I look at all these people, or maybe groups in Philippines or Japan, their resilience gives me hope. I being poor and not being funded, we are used to it. We know how it feels like, and we know how to survive. So I feel like, yeah, we don't have money. Then I was thinking, we don't have money anyway. We're gonna survive it. And it's going to be very different for countries that have so much money and suddenly don't have any. So I think that as Asians, we know how to survive. And I have, I have great hopes and aspirations for Asians.
Yeah, it's being resilient is in our DNAs.
Yeah, exactly. We're used to being poor, so it's fine. So,
So, what kind of advice or lessons would you like to share to your fellow activists or allies in in the region, if they're listening?
uh, well, so many. But I think our strength is always with each other. And then even if you're organizing on a national level, we should try to build alliance and networks cross border as well. Because I think if we come together, we'll be stronger and a lot more visible. So this is what I believe in with AFLN, and I have benefited from activists from other countries who helped me when women's groups in my own country refused to help me. So and I think that's the first key thing. We need to support each other and advocate together collectively. That will make us a lot more powerful. I think that's a Chinese saying: one chopstick you can break it. If you have a bunch of chopsticks, impossible.
I like that.
Yeah,
And I think you also mentioned a bit about self-care as well.
mm,
And I really agree with that point, especially I've been hearing stories about how activists who's been working and they feel burnout.
yeah.
So I think that's one of like a really, really good way as well for people to feel rejuvenated and ready to be resilient again.
Yeah, in Thailand, there's so much great organizations doing this. So I always try to partner with Thai organizations. Uh, and yeah, I think self-care, other than the practices, I think one of the key things is to not just eternal, how do we practice self-care with each other? So I mean, even in the movement, the realistic thing is that we will fight with each other. We will argue. There will be conflict because we are different human beings, right? So, but how can we have conflict in a way um, that promotes well-being in a way that it's like you can fight, but don't do personal insults. That kind of things, like practical things. How can we um, bring this kind of practices within our organizing? How can we look at our pay structure and not assume activists should suffer? Like you should only earn 10,000 baht, 20,000 baht, for example. But what is an equitable pay? I think those practices of self-care are self-care as well. Like how do you, maybe at the year end, do you close your office to give your staff a break, not just 5 days, maybe 2 weeks? You can afford it. So so how can we build it into the system? I think or else it's just we keep talking and then activists go home and try to self care themselves. So that's how I see it.
I agree. That sounds ideal, but at the same time, it's pretty hard given that,
Yeah,
we're limited by resources. We have to counter anti-gender sentiments and also at the
yeah,
same time taking care of one another. I think
yeah.
that's a balance that we have to find.
Yeah, I mean, even for us, it's the bare minimum. We have some rules. Of course, we fight with each other and people get upset. But some rules about fighting, like I said, no personal insult. If we fight, it's just about the work. And being more direct. Don't do the indirect thing. Closing our office for 2 weeks, end of the year, or maybe after a big workshop or conference, we usually let our staff off a week after. So like it's almost the bare minimum, but I think it's just, common sense. People are tired. If you drag them back to the office, they are not going to perform, and they'll be so tired and burn out in the end. So, or like um, adjusting the pay scale. When we started, the pay scale is not so great, but we adjusted it. It's not like super high now, but we adjusted it in a way that it is easier for people to earn a living and have some savings because we have no pension. Yeah, of course, it's not, like it's hard to do everything, but we can start with the small things first.
I like
Yeah.
the sound of that. And this is what I would call green flag organizations to work with.
Uh, we we are very busy. So people really do get burnout, and it just doesn't make sense to me to force people to go back to the office. But sometimes there's no choice. We have a lot of deadlines, but we try to like the little things. But of course, not everything is possible or not everything is advisable. But at least we try to look at people as people and try to figure out. And we try lah. I mean, it's hard. So sometimes you can't do everything.
That's true. It's a dynamic environment. So yeah, I totally get
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
just to be aware of time, I think I have only one last point that I want to discuss with you about. So I'd like to hear what kind of things that we have a lot of supporters of gender-based violence work listening. So I'm curious to hear what is it that they require to pay more attention to, or where to focus, or even where to start if they want to support gender-based violence work.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're going to maybe next year or the year after, we are going to start doing workshops for service providers, gender-based violence. So with allies and trainings around queer gender-based violence. I think the very first thing is to understand uh what we mean. So a lot of groups when a lot of women's groups, when I talk about gender-based violence or SRHR, I talk about LGBT people, including trans people. Their response to me is, yeah, yeah, we include LGBT people. Then I say, I'm not talking about LGBT people, I'm talking about LGBT people. So this indicates to me that they don't really understand the intersectional nature of LBQ and people who are assigned female at birth and how gender-based violence affects them. So, and for gay men, because they're also men, then patriarchy affects them in a different way. So I think the women's groups needs to first understand. If they don't understand, they really need to start having in-depth conversation about how they include or support LGBT groups working on gender-based violence. That's the or else how can they even design programs that are inclusive? So I've encountered groups from countries, the women's groups, the pioneers, the matriarchs, or SRHR or gender-based violence. Then while they are drafting laws, they're like, oh, it never occurred to us you need protection. Then I'm like, why not? We are also women, or like trans people also need protection. So so it tells you that there's this assumption it's the same for everyone, as well as not understanding the intersections and the nuances of how minority or marginalized people encounter gender-based violence. So if you're poor, your experience will be very different as well from someone who's more privileged.
Or people who are based in like countryside versus
Yeah,
city
yeah,
center,
exactly.
urban area, right?
Yeah. So we have also found that a lot of regional groups work with ci- people based in the capital because it's easier. They speak English. Then people from the rural areas, when we fly them in, their air ticket is like flying to America. Okay, so expensive because there are not a lot of flights. So
Mm.
having a more focus outside the capital area, people who don't have access, making sure we have language justice, spend the money. We tell our funders that we will spend the money on the language. It is very expensive, I know, but it's worth it. And then secondly, spend the money to bring them. And the third thing that a lot of groups forget is that when they come to Bangkok to the hotel, right, and they try to check in, what the hotel will ask for credit card. Do you think these people from rural areas have credit cards? All have money. So that economic anxiety is strong. So we learned and we told the hotel that do not collect credit cards or any form of cards, and that they don't feel like I'm poor, I'm coming to this beautiful city of Bangkok that is quite expensive. And yeah, so the little things matters. So these are, and also security concern, right? Like some of the activists from rural, they had to fly to capital and then they had to fly to Bangkok. And when they are going through the immigration inside their country, they get discriminated because first they're poor, they come from rural area. Secondly, they don't look straight, they look queer, right? So there's profiling happening, and many times they get stopped at immigration. Don't allow them to come. Say you don't have money, where you going? So, so yeah, and it happens, and these are the struggles of people from the rural area. And so we have like safety and security plan on how we will have a Zoom meeting with all of them first. We'll brief them, give them our numbers. We'll try to put them all together, and track their travel. So yeah, it's just so many little things that we have to learn to try to protect them. Yeah,
That's really important because without that, you will not be able to hear their voices,
yeah,
and their participation to begin with. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's so much discussion around how do we support rural people. 60% of Asia is in rural areas actually. So how do we help them? And some people complain we put them in nice hotels. I'm like, oh, they complain to me, and I said that you've suffered enough. You just stay 3 days in this nice hotel, enjoy the buffet, because you're going back to suffer again. And some of them come from places when they walk, they have look behind them, see who's following them. When they have meetings, they cannot all go to the meeting room or someone's house together because they look queer, so they have to go one by one. Because if they report to the police will come and things like that. So I will tell them like, look, you spend most 362 days suffering, 3 days in a nice hotel is okay. It's also a form of self-care. But of course, within our budget, of course, like we can afford it, we try not to like scheme on things like that. Make sure they are fed or, you know, yeah. So I think it's very important. Those are self-care practices.
yes, reminds me of Audre Lorde's quote where she wrote that it's self-care is not self-indulgent, it's an act of political warfare.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you. So I learned so much. I'm humbled by our experiences. So that's why we keep adjusting how we include them. But of course, Asia is so big, and we tend not to invite people in the capital. We try not to, and we always try to invite people outside the capital. Yeah, yeah,
It's but that's good to hear about like so many things that you have done and also the detail in how you brought together people. So where can we follow your work? I've been seeing how you roll out some short videos on Facebook. So you're on social media, right? But
yeah.
where can our listeners could just check out the great work that you do?
Yeah, I think we're most active on Instagram. So Asia LBQ Network, you can follow us there. Facebook as well, but a lot of people are not using Facebook anyway. So we also do some funny videos because we decided that the world is a traumatic place the last year, and it's okay to laugh a little bit and do something silly. It's I know you've seen some of our silly videos, and I think it's okay. It's okay to laugh. We don't have to always be like we do a lot of serious work. So spend 1 minute or 30 seconds of your time looking at our silly videos and laugh.
Yeah, I saw some of the videos and they're Gen Z humor as well. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you're Gen Z. Are you Gen Z?
I'm not.
Oh, I don't know. I can't tell. So yeah, I think also being able to reach out to young people and human rights and women's rights are were seen as like pretty boring. And I think we're not all that boring, and being able to reach them and being able to talk about human rights or women's rights in a way that is relatable to them, I think is important. So we try, but sometimes we try not to take ourselves too seriously. So
Well, thank you so much for today. I think I've learned a lot, and definitely I would love to grab coffee with you one day just to hear about other works that you have done. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
thank you. I really enjoyed the podcast. Can't wait to listen to it.
Or share it when it's available. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
ขอบ
right.
คุณ
Bye
ค่ะ Thank
bye.
you.
ขอบคุณค่ะสวัสดี
bye
ค่ะ
bye